I've never been to a game jam, so I applaud everyone who made it through. But when I was asked to give a presentation, I was like, what can I talk about? So I felt like, well, maybe I can talk about like how characters in video games and NPCs around us can actually like make us feel. So because that's part of like, laughing and all that. Oh, and I will have to do a little trick with, oh, I can actually tell you. Oh, okay, cool. So yeah. This is cool. So just so you know who I am, this is not to flex. This is all about just like whatever path you take to game dev, it's all valid, legit, and you can do it. You will always utilize it. I started at a theater school. I went for new media studies as my master's. I literally went over the ocean to get a little bit of education in human-computer interaction. So that's avatars, virtual agents, NPCs, whatnot, and a little bit of game design. And then I ended up at Warhorse, which is gonna be 2 years now that I've been working there on a post of game designer slash scripter, whatnot. And I work on an unannounced project that we've been working on. I cannot tell you anything about it. Please don't ask us. And I occasionally write articles about design for Level magazine. Yes, it's still being issued. It's still existing. We're doing fine. Thank you for asking. And it's actually a really good read, by the way. So yeah, as I said, I'm going to be talking about characters a little bit. And I will try to make a speed run through all of this because I can talk about this forever, but we don't have forever. We have until 10. So I was just gonna tell you a little bit about like design problems that we have when we want to make our characters believable and relatable and all other sort of things. Thank you. Next. I feel like Ariana Grande, but it's not as cool. So why we make games, you might ask. There are a lot of different reasons, but in like more like academic way, we kind of make sure that players have fun while experiencing something that they cannot really experience in the real life. So, and actually like more and more we're using knowledge from psychology because that's something that wasn't really developed, like the notion of like theories in psychology were not that developed, like, I don't know, like when Romero was making games. So we know more and more about like what makes people like motivated, have fun, want to stay there in the game world and want to relate with other like entities within the world. So we base this on something that's called self-determination theory, and I promise this is the only theoretical thing that you will hear from me about. But it's a theory that explains why people do something and why they're intrinsically motivated to do stuff. So it's not just playing games, it's also playing sports, being around people, doing all sorts of things. And in games specifically, like we need to hit all 3 marks with like need for autonomy. So you need to have that little bit of, I can do whatever I want with a little bit of guidance, but not too much so I feel like I'm doing it freely. You have a need for competence. So that means like you want to learn something and you want to have some sort of like feeling of progression. And you want to feel like you can relate to something or someone. And that's like, so autonomy and competence, you can build by different difficulty levels or like by level design and all sort of things. But need for relatedness actually comes from, hello people, actually comes to characters and NPCs in the world and kind of like how we build relationships with them. Thank you. Next. So, and yeah, a little bit of like where did NPCs came from. If you ever played D&D, you know that non-player or non-playable characters come from that age. I don't want to say age, like Ice Age. We're not that old. But they usually cannot be controlled by a player. Companions, more and more starting to be an exception. So you can play for someone else, not just by the avatar that you chose to. The way how you can also understand NPCs in like terms of game design is that they're visual, social, and narrative representation of the game system. So basically they're kind of like an intelligent interface of a game, and the game tells you through them like what you're supposed to do, what you're supposed to see, what you're not supposed to do, and they help you understand the world in general. So, and there are so many different types of them. You cannot really see that, but there's Meat Dog, there's Melina from Elden Ring, and there's, that's Monkey Island. Yeah, thank you. And next. So one of the design problems that like you need to achieve in order to have like authentic relationship or some sort of relatedness to a character is like you need to elicit authentic behavior. So what does that mean? Like we all kind of know like when you're talking to a person, what is that when like someone is authentic? So the design goal is like eliciting of trust and belonging and some sort of empathy and understanding with the character you're talking to. And what is interesting, it's not only among people. People have a tendency to build relationships with objects, and as creepy as it sounds. Technology, you probably saw a lot of movies like Her, which is pretty much about the whole, like that thing, or Wall-E, well, you don't really want to build a relationship with Terminator. Well, actually, in the second one, you do. So that kind of thing. And as if they project at least a little bit of social behavior, there's a bigger chance of building some sort of relationship. So thank you. So one of the solutions, so I always give you a problem and then I'll give you a little bit of solution. You're probably familiar with them because I assume you played a lot of games, but this is kind of like, this is how we do it. You have routines of NPCs. You can actually schedule their like kind of like daily routines. You can tell them what to do and what not to do. So it didn't used to be that way that much. Like we usually had games where behavior of NPCs were triggered by the player being in an area or doing something around them. But more and more with Red Dead Redemption and other games, we don't require the presence of the player. They just like the NPCs just doing whatever they want to do, like whatever they're pretty much scripted to do. And the player just comes there and just like, oh, it's a living world. This is so cool. Like this is where we are now in that space of NPCs doing routines. Okay, next. So as I mentioned, there's a social behavior. What is a social behavior? So the social behavior means that during conversation or during interaction with an entity, be it in, I don't know, like virtual assistant on an eShop or being in an NPC in a game, we need to have some sort of like social content and implications that comes from the conversation. So, and also like these are rules that when they are fulfilled, you feel like the conversation is flowing well and that you can have some sort of relation to that entity, but also you can break these to elicit the opposite. So you need to have proper gestures. So I'm gesturing a lot because I'm nervous right now. But also you have intonation, different sounds, different like pitch, lower voice, all that. You have facial expression reflecting tonality and the content of conversation. If they don't match, you feel like there's something off going on there. And also eye movement. This is actually interesting with robots. Like I know that there's not a lot of robots that have like actual eyes, but there are more and more being developed with that. And like the better the eye movement they represent and mimic, the better interaction people feel they have with that. If all of these things don't work, you feel like something is really off. Thank you. Next. So how do you like elicit at least a little bit of like a social system between characters or NPCs? We have reputation systems. So if you play Kingdom Come Deliverance, which I hope you did because it's an amazing game, wink wink, you probably ran into our reputation system. Or if you play Fallout 4, it's the same thing. There is a system that gathers information, like, and I'm very much simplifying it because I don't understand like the whole of it. So excuse me if I'm saying something badly, especially people from our company. Hi there. So these systems store information about two or more entities meeting, and they kind of like make the player feel like, hey, they have some sort of memory. They met and they remember you, or they remember something that you did. And this is how we build the notion of like, there's like some sort of social network within all those NPCs. And yeah, next. I'm really doing a speed run. I'm talking really fast, sorry. Another problem with especially in AAA games, when you have high fidelity 3D models and you really want to like build that relationship with an NPC, there's something called semblance of intelligence. NPCs, believe it or not, don't think on their own. So like ChatGPT also doesn't think on its own. And like, yeah, it's like die. Like there are people who actually think it thinks on its own. That's why I'm mentioning it. So, and we refer to this kind of thinking as representation of intelligence. So, if there are nerds and geeks around you, I'm one of them, and you know the Turing test, it actually doesn't tell you if something is intelligent, but if you perceive it as intelligent. So, it would be interesting to run it through some NPCs and like have a conversation with them and see like, does the Turing test think that, I don't know, Johnny Silverhand is intelligent? So we're working towards making NPCs and characters intelligent. And we like the baseline is we make people believe that they have their own agency, that they decide on their own, that they react to, they have like a notion of space, they react to what's around them, they have their own plans, and they act on them. Thank you. Next. So one of the like easy, or like, well, it's not easy, like nothing is easy in game dev, honestly. But one of those like easy ways how to do it is implementing barks. So it's basically what it is, like you're just like little short barks of like, oh, there's enemy, or oh, I lost the thing. You know, that there's like little things that kind of informs you about almost like not only the situation that's ahead and around you, but also that like, oh, that NPC noticed that there's something like missing, or they lost something, or they know where the enemy is and all that. Like there's actually, if you don't know the YouTube channel of AI in games, I very much recommend it, because Tommy Thompson, who has it, not only talks about like the AI systems and autonomous system and all that, but also about these little things, like design things that we use to make something more intelligent. Thank you. Next. Okay, and one of the, also another like solutions where it's like a little bit of social behavior and a little bit of intelligence and kind of awareness of the surrounding are more and more used in games, and especially in open world games. And it's part of like emergent design. So where you just like let different systems do their own shit, so to speak, and you hope that that it's gonna be actually like doing a lot of interesting things. Like, I don't know, like one faction that doesn't like another faction, they're gonna fight when they meet. Sometimes it's fun to watch that, because and when this is from, I think, Jedi Fallen Order, I think. So this is also like an easy way how to get rid of enemies. Like you come somewhere and just like, okay, I'll just let them fight and I'll wait. And usually it works. Like sometimes they notice you, so that's a whole other problem there. But, you know, and in the Assassin's Creed Odyssey, there's like a whole like mercenary system. When you run into a mercenary and he's going after you and just like hunting down each other. So that's another way how to kind of like make people think that there's like more to live than just like NPCs going around. Thank you. And now, why do we do this? Like, why do we? Okay, you can. Yeah.
I don't want spoiler.
No. It's okay. It's okay. It's fine. So, how do we even like relate to these things? Like, how do we find that like capacity in ourselves to have some sort of relationship or like relate to something that's apparently is not alive, though we like know it. So one of them is something called parasocial relationships, which you've probably heard about, because it's a phenomenon known from the 50s, and it was later elaborated more on in the 70s, and it started with TV anchors, because people were spending so much time in front of television, they were building relationships with people they've never met just because they saw them on TV. This is why we have relationship with YouTubers, bloggers, streamers, and all our sort of other people. And it's basically one-way relationship with someone who is on the screen, and you start building a relationship with them. Sometimes it happens that it's like a very intimate type of relationship, like you feel like you know those people, which then when you actually meet that person results in a lot of creepy situations. But yeah, that's part of it. So, and also like you probably all know Friends. So that's why a lot of people were so sad when Matthew Perry died, because they spent so much time watching him and they related to him as so much that he was something close to an actual friend. It wasn't, also there was a lot of people, you know, referring to him as like, oh, that's Chandler, you know, like that's not Matthew Perry. Like his persona on a TV was like more than him as an actor. So yeah. And Another thing is, and I touched upon it a little bit with how we make relationship with objects and the technology, is anthropomorphization. Yeah, we do it to dogs. It's not healthy, I think. But also, like sometimes people think that outlets in Denmark are happy, or some of them, like, or some outlets. They actually are happy. I believe they're like happy. It's supposed to be one of the happiest nation ever. So, you know, and there are some outlets that actually look really grumpy. And I think that there's an Instagram account of people kind of like snapping pictures of something that resembles a face. So we do it. We all do it. Yeah. So and what's actually like fun fact? People have tendencies to act nicer to technology that has a woman's voice. That's why all the assistants are women, by the way. I believe so. Yeah, so that's another thing. And that's like basically we transfer human qualities on objects or animals and build relationship with them. Thank you. Next. And one huge part of it, it's kind of like all encompassing, is theory of mind, which is something that we are all born with. And whenever we see a person, we start to like from the way they talk, way they look, how they look at us, and how they behave, we start assessing them like mentally, like we start mentalizing their state. And it's all automatically. You really cannot avoid it. I'm sorry about that, but it's based on visual, social, and other signs. And the bigger the I hate this word. Anthropomorphization is, the deeper and more complex we think the mental states of that person are. So that's why the more fidelity you have in your character, the more your player's gonna like relate to them. And also, one warning, this is why it's not totally okay to like to represent like people who have mental state or like mental health as caricatures or monsters in TV shows and films and video games, because people have a tendency to believe that when you have a scar on your face, like imagine Bond movies, all of those people, all of those villains have something fucked up with their face, honestly. And that's how we perceive them. Like, you have a scar on your face, you're probably not a safe person. You know, so there's like a lot of media, I wouldn't say brainwashing, it's just like media images that are ingrained in our face. So yeah, not in our face, in our mind. Thank you. Next. So yeah, pop culture is to blame for everything. No, seriously, there's so, like I'm almost 35. And I spend a lot of time watching all these movies, and I know that I'm perceiving a lot of like robots and AI through the lenses of this. Next. By the way, Short Circuit is a really funny movie, if you haven't seen it. And also like if you want to blame someone for like being really prone to anthropomorphize everything. I said it wrong, I don't care. Disney and Pixar. Like, if you look at every single movie, there's at least, and it's a funny thing actually, there's at least one animal that acts like a dog, but it's not a dog. And they're usually horses. For whatever reason, they're usually horses. But it's another thing, like, well, there's a whole another level of, it's not even anthropomorphization, it's probably something else, but you get me. So, and also with the Starship Troopers and Aliens, if you remember, the humans in there are just like, we're the, like the upper race, we have the upper hand in this situation and all that. And when they actually realize that, well, both bugs, I would say, actually have some sort of society and they think, that's where like everything is starting to be more like, oh, we actually should like use, well, they don't say that, but like they started, like the characters start to use a little bit of like theory of mind, just like, if they did this, what would be the next step that they were gonna do? So that's also like another way how to think about it. Oh yeah, and there's also a whole another layer of identification with an as and representation, which I will not go deeper into because it's a topic on its own. But we have, so more and more video games are based on some sort of like really deep stories of complicated characters or complicated things and events and everything. And they want us to identify more and more with the characters. Like this is how we do it with movies and TV shows. Like you identify with someone and just like watch it more and more because you want to know like what's going to happen. And games have this unique ability as well. So, but the thing is like just because you are part of a demographic group that, I don't know, Lara Croft represents, you don't have to necessarily identify with her or as her. It's more about stories and like the like glimpses of personality that you see in those characters and you see in yourself that you can relate to. So if you haven't played Tell Me Why, I highly recommend it because it's a story about being transgender and what it means for people being in that situation, going back to their hometown when no one really understands them and no one recognizes them. But at the same time, even though I don't have the type of experience, I don't have friends who are transgender, I can relate to that experience just because that deep representation put in the game is so well done that there are places where I can actually empathize way more than with actually some of the characters in games that would be more into my kind of world. The same thing goes with Last of Us. Like Joel lost his daughter, Ellie doesn't have her family, and they're just like bonding coming throughout their story, and there's just like little glimpses of like we just want this world to be normal. Like who cannot relate to that? And like one of my favorite ones is actually Regis. Like I know, like I'm not a vampire. I don't live in a fantasy world. I don't have the knowledge that he has, but for whatever reason, like I always like sympathizes with him and identify with him. Just like he's a scholar, he knows a lot of things. You know, he's going on adventures and he has friends. And Geralt is grumpy when he's around, but you know, we always have like someone always has someone who's grumpy around him. But yeah, so that's another thing. And next, and this is the last one. And actually, one of my colleagues is sitting right there. Cyril, hi. Inspired me for this because I thought like I'm giving like all these people so much theory and just like it's like information heavy. And we ran into each other yesterday in the kitchen. It was like, oh, we're going to your talk. I'm just like, oh, great. You know, like what it's gonna be about? You know, I don't know really, but about characters and whatnot. And he was like, you know, like I really like what they did with The Last of Us Part 2. So there's like a little design exercise for you.
Is there a spoiler for last one?
No, I will not tell you.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I'm just playing it.
No, it's fine. It's just like if you played it, not you, other people, but if you played it or you plan to play it, given what I've told you today, try to dissect. That's like a game design exercise a little bit, and narrative as well, and design character as well. Just like try to think about like why you were so upset in certain parts, why you were not upset in certain parts, why you were upset when killed, and why you had to play for. Is this enough for everyone to know? And how the game.
That far, I'm good.
Okay, cool. So I could have talked about it the whole time. Okay, it's just like and that's actually Cyril's idea, and you need to give credit where the credit's due. It's like how the game has like this way. What the affordances of a game as a medium allows you to experience what you experience by playing The Last of Us. I'm really curious about the next season because I'm really wondering how that's going to happen because I don't think it's going to be the same. Also, I'm really sorry for the people who haven't played the game and are waiting for the next season of The Last of Us. There's going to be a lot of uproar. Been there, done that. But yeah, so this is what I leave you with. And thank you for your attention and time. And yeah, thank you.